Cool. All right, so we're recording all of this, so it should be captured. If you miss anything, you can view it later on. We'll send you the link so that you can view the video.
Okay, so, oops, which one's down? Okay. So before we get started, just some housekeeping. Please, everyone, remember to keep your phones and computers on mute so that we don't have 50-odd people with background noise. So make sure your phones and computers are on mute. If you have any questions that you want to ask at the end of the presentations, there's a comment box that you'll find in the lower right-hand side of your screen, and you can type your questions in there, and then we will pick questions at random at the end. If your question is being addressed, then you should go ahead and unmute your phone and computer so that you can elaborate on what your question might be, but only if your question is being addressed. And then just a reminder that we are recording this WebEx, so you can access it again if you've missed anything, and obviously for those who weren't able to make it live. Okay. Okay, so also a reminder that all of this week's materials, readings, can be found on the Accelerator website, which is fashiontechaccelerator.com, and the password is PreeLine. Okay, so we hope that you're enjoying the readings, and also you should submit your homework as well through the Accelerator website. So before we get started, I just wanted to tell you all a little bit about PreeLine. I believe some of you have already signed on to become members, but basically PreeLine is a social trend-setting platform that is connecting brands with users in front of the product lifecycle. So basically we've created a very dynamic social environment where users can see future fashions and weigh in on the trends and the merchandise that brands are planning to put out there in about 6 months, and it gives you the power to be trendsetters, to tell the brands what you think, and to get a peek behind the curtain within the fashion industry. And the brands, in turn, are learning about their consumer preferences, and they can make critical decisions about inventory and understand more their consumer demographics through users telling them what they love, what they hate, what they want to buy through saving something. So we're really allowing brands to learn directly from you all, from the consumer, which is a critical opportunity for brands.
Cool. So a lot of people have been asking us, what was your motivation behind hosting this Fashion Tech Accelerator? Why are you doing this? Your company is focused on predictive analytics. And really kind of our decision to start this was based on the fact that we wanted to get involved on campus, but we didn't want to create the everyday ambassador program, and we actually really wanted to give back to the students. I know that when I was a student at Princeton, there was no class available that addressed fashion tech, and I was really interested in the subject, and I had to go and just knock on a lot of doors and ask a lot of questions. And we realized that this was an opportunity where we could offer you guys a peek into the fashion tech industry, which is a really cool industry right now in New York and worldwide, and really give you the opportunity to get excited about the industry and hopefully join us upon graduation within the fashion tech industry, wherever you may land. So we really encourage you to take this opportunity to meet the speakers who are joining us. They're really amazing people, and also to meet your fellow students. Your fellow students are also incredible. All of your applications were so incredibly strong. We're so impressed by you guys. So we really want to take this opportunity to help you guys build a community of like-minded fashion tech entrepreneurs who are looking to build something great. So our speakers for today, we have two amazing, amazing women joining us. We're so lucky to have them here. So we have Elizabeth Cardiello starting us off. She's the founder and CEO of Cafe Unimatic, an amazing, amazing coffee machine and coffee roasted bean. And she truly is an entrepreneur at heart, and her story is just incredible. We're really excited to have her join us. And then Maya is joining us as well. She is with Fashion Tech Forum, which if you guys don't know Fashion Tech Forum, I definitely encourage you to go check it out. It is the best fashion tech conference here in New York. They get all of these amazing speakers to come and talk about all the innovations that are happening within the industry. So we're really excited to have these two women with us today. And again, as they're speaking, we encourage you to ask questions in the comment box on the right-hand side. Continue to keep your phone on mute, though, and then we'll address those comments when they come to kind of the end of their talks. So thanks so much, guys. All right. Okay. Go ahead. All right.
All right. So I'm Elizabeth Cardiello. It's great to be here. I think something that, before I start, I think it's something that we all really want for you is to join this space and to be here, but be open, and be open to whatever that means. And whether that means, learning these things or joining a team at some point or starting something of your own. We were actually just talking behind the scenes, and it seems like the word entrepreneurship now is actually really cool, which is awesome. But I think a while ago, it didn't used to be. No one really knew what a startup was. That was something you did with your car. So I think it's really important to enter this space with an open mind and just kind of see where it takes you. So I think the first thing that I'm going to do with you is an exercise that I wish people did for me when I was just starting, or probably your age. And this exercise is meant to get you a little bit out of your comfort zone. So what I want you to think about is one word that if anyone in your life used that word to describe you, you'd be totally flattered. I'll give you a second. But it's a word that no matter if it's your boss or your mom or dad or someone else in your family or your friends or a professor, no matter who it is, or friends, you want that one word. You want it to be an inspirational word. You want it to be a word that is something that you aspire to. Maybe it doesn't describe you quite yet, but it describes the person you want to be. So, for example, my word's been passion. And so no matter who it is, when someone says, she totally embodies passion, that's it for me. So that works. I mean, I have a business partner. His is generosity. He's a professor. So that makes sense. But basically, at the end of the day, success is impressing yourself. So if you know what this word is, if you can figure out what it is that you want to do for people and who you want to be, it's really just a question about your values. And at the end of the day, figuring out where you want to go in life really just comes back to your values anyway. So if you figure out this word, it can be inspire, it can be anything that you want it to be. I would say write on a Post-it and literally just stick it somewhere, because when you're really aware of this, it's something that you can come back to and you can check yourself against all the time. So a very simple thing that I'll do, that a lot of people I know will do, is if you know this word, you can check everything in your life against it. So, for example, is this project fueling my passion? Is this relationship fueling my passion? Is this person fueling my passion? And if people aren't, or if things aren't, it's okay to get rid of them. And it makes decision making a lot easier. So it's something that I think, for example, Steve Jobs, the guy never said, I want to build something called an iPhone. He had no idea what that was. His goal, though, was he knew that he was going to use design and technology to impact the world, right? So it's more about knowing where you want to end up and sort of reverse engineering yourself to get there, rather than trying to be really specific about the path. Because at the end of the day, if you told me 5 years ago that I would have given a TEDx talk or, been in GQ, in, Amex Open Forum. I mean, if you would have told me the crazy things that I've ended up doing, I never would have imagined them for myself. But the fact that I was open enough to just kind of say yes and see where things took me, I honestly think that was half the magic. So this exercise is really meant to replace a question that I hope you haven't been asked too much, but something tells me that you probably have. And that question is, what do you want to do when you grow up? And it's probably something that you stress over. It's generally something that college kids stress over a ton. And what I want to tell you is that I'm 31 and this has been a great ride, but I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I have no idea. And what I'm basically trying to say is that that's okay. It's not something that you need to be worried about. And at the end of the day, in my life experience, it doesn't really matter that much. And I think the most important thing is, what I want to give you permission to do is, if someone asks you that question, you get to say, respectfully, you get to say, I don't really have a good answer to that question, but what I can answer is, who do I want to be and what do I want to give? And I think if you know that, just in broad strokes, you can reverse engineer your entire career, because at the end of the day, there are so many different paths to get to where you want to go. It's just being open to and creative around how to get there. So it's not really the what you do, it's the why you're doing it. And when people can tell that you're passionate about something, doors just open, and doors that you may not even have been shooting for. So a little bit about my story, kind of random, which is totally okay, but like they say, it only makes sense in hindsight. I went to college, I got my MBA, against all of my own pledges, I went into finance, and I was at Credit Suisse for about a year, and then I was at a hedge fund for 3. And looking back, it made no sense, because I had been starting businesses with my dad since I was a little kid. I mean, I had my first product on shelves when I was 13, and it was fun. And my dad and I would brainstorm. He was a bit older when they had me, so I always joked that I was more of his apprentice than I was his daughter. And for example, he had given me business cards. I think I might have been 6, and his just said his name and mine said owner. And it was a running joke in our family, but I was kind of groomed to start something on my own. And looking back, I think because I realized I had such big shoes to fill, I think I got intimidated. And I think from the outset, I thought, well, let me just try something else, because what happens if I can't fill them in doing something on my own? So I went to finance, didn't love it. And then unfortunately, about 5 years ago at this point, lost my dad. And being an only child, I had to kind of become the dad and the daughter in my family. And the one thing that I can probably say is going to be true for all of you is that there are going to be curveballs, and your path is not going to be straight. No matter if you think you found the greatest job, you found the greatest thing, it's never going to be exactly what you expected to, and that's okay. And something that I'm actually kind of proud of is that I was able to roll with the curveballs enough to turn them into something not awful, actually something very good. So after losing my dad, I had to do things like clean out his old office. And we lived in Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn, and I had to do things like, it took about 6 months to clean out. So the place was like 50 years of stuff in this one place. So think old checks from old businesses. He was a crazy Italian entrepreneur, so he did everything. So he had a stainless steel cookware company, a cosmetic company. He taught positive thinking to New York City policemen and all of his sales managers. He had an advertising agency, a talent agency. I mean, you name it, this man did it. I think someone's saying they can't hear me. Can we help? Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you? Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, I think I should.
Okay.
I'm listening.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Just want to make sure. So I opened this closet that I always knew to have some old inventory in it, and I was excited because one of the things that he sold and made with his cookware company was this coffee pot, and it was back in the 60s, and because he was in the houseware space, they kind of amassed everything for the kitchen. And since he was from Italy, he hated American coffee. And he literally said, this stuff tastes like dishwater. I don't know what you're doing. You people have got it all wrong. And so he ended up helping to collaborate and create, and then buy the patent and manufacturing rights on this coffee pot that he called the Unimatic. And it was pretty cool. I mean, he ended up doing a ton of other things. So it was one of many things. But I always knew it existed. We used it in my house forever. And interestingly enough, I go to open this closet that he always called a closet. I thought there was just a bunch of random stuff in it. And as fate would have it, I started moving boxes. And I was moving boxes for about 2 hours before I realized that I couldn't find the walls. And the walls in this closet never came, because the door wasn't to a closet at all. The door was to a warehouse with the last 5,000 models of this coffee pot that were made in Italy literally 50 years ago. And they were perfect, just dusty. And it seemed like my last chance to start a business with him. And even though, at that point I realized I've added absolutely no value to any of that. So I need to do something to make it mine. And it kind of launched, and I knew nothing about coffee, mind you. I knew I liked it, but that was about it. And what I ended up doing was researching the coffee side, because my dad always said that, this thing makes the perfect cup of coffee because of, the interesting way it works and the way that it has a heating stone on the bottom. And it was revolutionary for the time. So I looked into what the perfect cup of coffee might be and found that technically you're supposed to roast coffee for the way that you brew coffee, which means if you think about it like a science experiment, now there are so many different ways to make coffee. And generally they were cultural in, whatever area you were in. But here, now that coffee is really cool, a ton of different ways to make it. So, for example, pour over takes a minute. AeroPress takes about 2 minutes. French press takes 4. Drip depends. But say for mine, for the Unimatic, it takes 14 minutes and 7 minutes of extraction time, which means when the water hits the ground. So if you think about it like a science experiment, you can actually think through, okay, well, a different chemical process is happening for each of these different ways to make coffee. And if you think about it, if you roast your coffee specifically for what's going to happen to it next, it'll actually taste better. So we taste tested coffee for an entire summer and came out with a line of coffee, or a blend of coffee, and then came out with 2 more. So now we're selling the original pots. We get to tell a story and keep a legacy alive that means a ton to me. And actually, it's interesting, even my interns will say, you realize that the story isn't yours anymore. We tell it to people because it gives us a cool story to tell. And the fact that coffee connects people as it is, but the fact that this coffee pot, when I was young, would be on my breakfast table. And my dad and I would talk about business ideas for hours. And basically, it's what kept us there because of the heating stone on the bottom, because it kept the coffee warm. He and I sat there for hours talking about, we could take an idea from concept to international franchise in 10 minutes flat. And it was this coffee pot that kept us there. And now, and those are the memories that I cherish. And those are, I realized that that's what made me me, those conversations. And now the fact that I can put that coffee pot on someone else's table and allow them to have those conversations, it's pretty special. So I can definitely say that when you have passion for something that you're doing, it definitely trumps all the curveballs that can come your way. For example, my mom's house was hit by Hurricane Sandy pretty badly. And I started this business. It wasn't really off the ground yet, but it was going. But when you love what you do so much, I would be working at 2 o'clock in the morning, but that was totally fine because I was excited about it. And it didn't feel like work. And I think that's one of my definitions of success, when the lines between work and play blur so much that they disappear. So that is definitely my hope for you. I hope that one day those lines disappear. In all of this, we also started an organization. It's something that I realized over the years that I learned a ton of things at that breakfast table. And it was interesting that I started to give back over coffee to other people, the same things that my dad was teaching me. And it was funny, I had to actually learn what I learned. I had to learn that there were names for the things that he taught me. So he taught me a lot of positive psychology. He taught me sales, but really just relating to people and storytelling and how to do it the right way and how to actually listen to people and how to frame things. And I think something that's very important in whether it's leading a team or being part of a team or starting a business is figuring out how to actually allow people to hear what you want them to hear, and to actually frame things in a way that, for example, if you want to get an idea across, you can either, people say, have your elevator pitch. Well, actually, I think that's actually an awful idea. So what I would rather see you do is ask the person that you want to talk to, ask them a question, know what part of your story they relate to most and that they care about most, and lead with that. Don't lead with whatever you think might be most important, because that might not be what's important to them. So it's the little things. So something that makes me really happy actually is last month we launched sort of our social entrepreneurship part of the business, and it's an organization called Legacy Out Loud, and it's kind of like the exercise I made you do in the beginning. It's a lot more of that, and we believe that we can help build confidence in young people and young women specifically through a combination of mission and mindset and mentorship. So currently we have 14 girls in college around the country, and we're having them ask themselves the big questions, but really big questions. and, basically around, who are you? Who do you want to be? What do you want to give to the world? And then the next piece is mindset. So it's cultivating the proper mindset. Some of it's positive psychology and knowing, don't talk to yourself in a way that you wouldn't talk to a friend, meaning be hard on yourself and ask a lot of yourself to be kind to yourself. Also, I think it's really interesting, and I hope you all know that failure is a badge of honor. If you're not failing every day, that means you're not really trying something hard. That means you're not challenging yourself and you're not learning. And if you're not learning, my dad would always say, if you're not learning, you're dead. So you don't want that. So my hope for you is definitely to know that failure is a badge of honor. And the last piece is throughout this process, we'll be connecting them with mentors, and they're women entrepreneurs, investors, innovators. We have about 600 so far, and it's growing. So we're really excited to be able to give back. And I think honestly, when you're doing something for the right reason, things kind of unfold for you. And for me to be able to start a business that I didn't know anything about, and to be able to give back in a way that really speaks to me and the things that I'm really passionate about, it all kind of just unfolded in front of me. But I think that once you get really clear on exactly what it is that you want to give and what your strengths are and what you want to give to the world, and even especially what you're not good at and what you don't want to do, and that's actually really important too. So I hope that that's helpful. And there are two things that I would love to leave you with. One is that confidence leads to competence, not the other way around. So you don't need to be perfect at something to start it. You need to start it to get good at it. And the second is the quote you probably see on the screen. And it's what the mind can conceive, the mind can achieve. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them here. We'll also be heading into a discussion about fashion tech. And we really, we wanted to start off specifically with Elizabeth. She has this amazing story. I do think that fashion tech is highly tied into entrepreneurship. And that's really why we wanted to, start with this message to you guys, because as students, the world is your oyster. And so we really do encourage you to take on the opportunities, as Elizabeth was saying. So, yeah. If you guys have, let's see if we have this chat. Let's see, do you guys have any questions? You can put it into this, the chat box. All right, so there's anything coming through. So what we'll do is we'll transition over to Maya. If any questions, just type it in, just say for Elizabeth, and we'll address those after.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Good luck.
Cool. Thank you. Awesome. Now we have Maya joining us. Let's go full screen mode. And we should be good. Cool. Cool. I don't know if you guys can see me or just the presentation.
I think right now just the presentation.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Maya Bodick. I'm excited to be here chatting with you about fashion technology. I'm going to tell you really briefly about sort of what I do. As you can see sort of on this first page of the slide, there's a little message, Fashion the Future, indexes a community of creative talent, fashion insiders, and inspired brands shaping the future together. This is sort of a mock-up homepage of the site that I'm working on to launch, which will be a tool to sort of help creative talent in fashion connect with brands. More on that later. But in terms of fashion technology overall, it's really what are we talking about? And so I want to, hang on 1 second here. The slide isn't going. Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry. Of course, technical difficulties, but obviously not the expert after all. So quickly, I want to tell you about Fashion Tech Forum, which is the platform that we launched. I worked for a company called Karen Harvey Consulting Group for many years, and
at KHC, we did a lot of executive search and consulting within fashion and retail, placing different leaders and creative directors within different companies, from Michael Kors to Coach to Tiffany to The Row to Gap, across the board. And in doing that kind of work, we really started to see and understand what was on the minds of the CEOs and the top leaders at these companies, and what was sort of, what the some of the biggest problems were relative to technology, and how quickly technology was impacting business in basically every aspect. So we created FTF, and it's been 2 years now that we've hosted the conference. And so what I'm going to do in this talk is just sort of talk about a couple of sort of overarching themes that we've focused on at FTF, and that I just think are sort of major themes in the fashion tech space. And some of these things are going to be, I think, very obvious to, what anyone might assume is fashion tech related, and some might be a little bit less obvious, and those are also, I think, maybe even more interesting. So here we go. Just quickly, a couple of speakers that we had at Fashion Technology Forum. So we had, from Andrew Rosen, the founder and CEO of Theory, Victor Luis, the CEO of Coach, and to Emily Weiss, the founder of Into the Gloss. So we had some really incredible people. So one of the places I sort of like to start in this fashion tech conversation is talking about direct-to-consumer brands and sort of the advent of direct-to-consumer brands. I'm not going to go into the history of these 4 brands, but I'm guessing you all know all 4 of these brands. And looking at their evolution is very interesting. So when they first launched, it was obviously quite sort of exciting and a totally new concept for a true brand with product to be launched that didn't have a retail store. But these were maybe 4 of the sort of pioneering brands that showed that it could happen. What's the most interesting now is that what we're seeing is that all of these are opening, if they don't have retail stores already, retail stores or some sort of itself can live physically. So that's where I think we can see something very interesting in terms of the evolution. What's happening is direct to consumer, which has been successful, but we see that success usually only goes so far as to go back to brick and mortar. And we'll talk a lot more about this later, but quickly, I'm pointing out Everlane, who actually does not have retail yet, but I think what Everlane did was actually also expose sort of the behind the scenes retail process and the way that apparel is marked up, and why then direct to consumer products can be at such a more affordable price. And so I think that really was hugely informative for most consumers, and they started expecting better prices and even better quality and better brands. So again, more on that later as well. But so I want to also touch on this idea of content, context, and commerce. Sometimes we call it contextual commerce, but it's basically, this idea that today brands and retailers are starting to sort of act like channels for content and media. And if they haven't been doing that yet, it's basically that they should be. I pulled a couple of examples of people that I think are doing this kind of well, and these are just a few examples, and this is what I've done throughout the presentation, just pulled a couple of examples. There's obviously, many more than what I highlight here, but so looking at Brit & Co., for example, it's really a media and content company for the DIY generation, but what they did was they sort of very naturally were able to infuse commerce and shoppable products right there on the site. And I actually also pulled in a Twitter buy button, which happened to also be an example from them. So it really shows how ahead of things they are. It's this overall idea that brands now need to be where consumers are, whereas before brands really expected consumers to come to them. Now brands are working very hard to sort of be where the consumers are. And that happens to be on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Pinterest, and so on. Goop is an interesting example because it really started as a blog by Gwyneth Paltrow of what she was wearing, what she was, products she was using that she liked, recipes that she was making that she liked, and it sort of evolved into a recommendation platform as well. And people started to see that, or they started to see that really taking hold, and people really trusted her advice, and they started buying her recommendations. What's interesting about that example is that it's really, it's a genuine and authentic sort of brand story, and there's an authentic voice that started Goop. So it's very difficult for you to just sort of start a blog and say, okay, I'm going to make contextual commerce. Because the idea is that context is something authentic and real and powerful that people are already following. I put Shop Bazaar up here because it's sort of largely ignored in the industry, but it's actually really one of the first sort of e-commerce platforms that was derived purely from a fashion media publication, Harper's Bazaar. And people don't talk about it that much, but it's actually very well executed. And there was all this recent talk about Style.com and Vogue sort of shutting down Style.com in order to launch their own e-commerce. And Shop Bazaar has been around for a couple of years now, and really doing it in a very sort of real and authentic way, where they're picking the content that they would be for Harper's Bazaar, and yet able to sort of link directly and then send readers straight to Shop Bazaar. And it does ask that age-old question of, well, how do I not feel like I'm reading advertorials all day long? And how does it keep the content authentic and real and not forced? And there's sort of that church and state type separation. But in terms of Harper's Bazaar, I think they would argue that they carry the products they want to carry because they're what's featured in the magazine. And I'm sure they have to, bend on that a little bit, but it's still a really interesting example to look at. And then I just quickly mentioned a brand a little startup called Curate, which has really shown also the power of user-generated content, and just this idea that users are taking, images from across the internet. They're posting them on their own feeds, on their own Instagram, and brands sort of don't have that control anymore. But what they're really also honing in on is this idea that content is so much more authentic, and users don't really want to go just look at a bunch of ads. They want to look at real content, whether it's on Pinterest or Instagram, and they want to shop that stuff directly. So moving on, and on that note, a little segue into social media and what this has sort of done for content and commerce, which is obviously a lot. But I really like this idea of the idea that social media and how brands are harnessing it to tell authentic stories and not sound like, they're just sort of tooting their own horn. And it's also why they're able to sort of partner with bloggers as long as that relationship makes sense for the brand. Obviously, Burberry did a collaboration with Snapchat this past Fashion Week, so I think that's just interesting as sort of a first. Misha Nonu did her fall collection on Instagram to sort of, I think, mixed reviews. But one platform I want to talk about that I think is just interesting for people to be aware of is both Like to Know It and Reward Style. So Reward Style was one of the first affiliate models and tools for back-end tools for bloggers to be able to monetize their recommendations. So if I'm Leandra Medine, the Man Repeller, and I blog, I'm posting 4 years ago, I'm posting an outfit and I'm not really even thinking about, well, maybe Leandra was, but most bloggers weren't even thinking about that this is a service that they're providing. And that if people, their readers, go and shop go and shop those products, that they, they were actually cutting themselves out. So some of these bloggers, including Amber, who's sort of pictured there in the middle, had a blog, and also had sort of a personal shopping service and would blog products, and users would buy them, but she wasn't getting any commission. So the solution was, well, I want to just move the personal shopping online. If I post a picture of a bracelet I love and a user buys it, I should make a commission from that retailer. And long story short, Reward Style was born, and it's one of the first and most widely used affiliate models for any blogs that you read, including, like I said before, Man Repeller, Vogue. It's used very widely. And more recently, because their tool is really about, it's supporting the publishers, the producers of the content. So it's the bloggers themselves. And what they saw was that those people were moving to Instagram. And that's where they were finding more engagement. They were finding more followers. So they developed a tool called Like to Know It, which is used on Instagram, and it's built into Instagram. One conversation that we could have a minute, later is that there are some tools that have sort of tried to recreate Instagram as a shopping tool. But what's difficult is people are on Instagram because it's authentic content, and you don't necessarily want to sign on to a social media channel and sort of be fed ads that you're supposed to buy. You want to discover. So what Like to Know It does, if you sign up for this tool, you sign up online and you link it to your Instagram account, and then any of the bloggers that are registered with Like to Know It, which are many, if you like one of their photos, you get an email sent directly to your inbox with links to the products that they're wearing. So it's a seamless tool, and it was the only one that was built to work directly within the Instagram platform, and somewhat quite genius for that reason. Of course, another conversation is that now Instagram is starting their own buy button. So who knows how that will affect their business. It could affect it a great deal. Maybe it won't for various reasons. But it's all very interesting to think about. And just also goes to show the nature of this industry right now and how quickly everything is changing. Oh, just also quickly, you see her sitting with Miroslava Duma. If you are an Instagram or street style follower, you know her. She's an incredible stylist and content creator, and they've partnered to help bring Like to Know It together. To bring Like to Know It to sort of Russia and Asia, where the sort of playbook for attracting users is different. So also, again, segueing into mobile commerce, and I also added and social commerce, because I think the trend we're seeing is not only people shopping on their phones, but shopping on their phones with their friends. I pulled some photos from Net-a-Porter because I think the Net set is sort of just that. It's amazing content, and you're sort of able to follow and shop with friends, but in a digital way. I also am highlighting a younger company that maybe is less known. Maybe everyone knows it. I don't know. Called Poshmark. What they're doing is kind of fascinating. So the founders launched it about 4 years ago, and they had the vision at that time where people were not shopping on their phones yet, to launch it as a mobile-only app. So they don't really have a functioning desktop, and I think everyone at the time said, you're crazy, and they said, no, we think this is the right thing to do. They did it, and it's basically a resale site. So any user can go on and photograph items in your own closet, but it also has it's a very community. So it has sort of that authentic feeling, and at the same time, it's very community driven. So you can figure out who you want to follow based on types of clothes they sell. And so different users start sort of getting a follower base based on their personal aesthetic and what they love. And they sort of start to become seen as, stylists almost and style setters. What Poshmark is doing that I wanted to highlight that I think is really fascinating is they're now at this stage where they have users that are such power users that are selling, it's their full-time job on Poshmark, and to become retailers where they're going to trade shows, just like any other, independent boutique or retailer. setting up their shops, but their shops are like this within Poshmark. So as opposed to saying, oh my God, I have to rent a space, I have to decorate it, I have to buy all of this merchandise, fill this store. No, I can actually be a retailer on Poshmark only and be able to do that as a business. And some of these girls are making really crazy amounts of money running their own stores within Poshmark. And I think that looking at that from the perspective of this is sort of where retail could be going. So by one person who sort of embodies a certain look or feel as opposed to a brand, it does also lead me to this notion of brands acting more and more like human beings, like people, and having such a clear sort of distinct voice and point of view. But I find it fascinating that this app has sort of enabled individual users to start their own retail stores, basically, online within the app. And then I also included Spring, and I think Spring is a really interesting case study as well. And so Spring is, I don't know, again, how many people know about it, but it's a shopping app that basically sort of took a lot of the best aspects of Instagram, best aspects of various social platforms, and sort of put them all into one shopping platform. And, I don't know how Spring is sort of, I don't know anything about how the business is doing right now. I think a lot of people really love it, but I think also the tricky part is that you are sort of scrolling of what feels more like a feed of ads as opposed to a feed of content, because it's really the brands posting items. So it's almost like any other advertisement. And I think that is tricky, in an age where people want to see authentic content again. So I think the example of Poshmark in particular just sort of leads us into this future of retail. Like, what is the future of retail? And this looks so many ways. And I just brought in a couple of, three very different examples. I'm showing here, obviously, the Instagram buy button, which we just talked about. Instagram being sort of the fastest growing social platform right now. It's a no-brainer for them to sort of implement a commerce channel where a user doesn't have to find the link in the bio, and then click there, and then be led to the website. And at our site, someone said clicks kill conversions. So the more clicks, the more sites you have to go to, the less likely you're going to follow through. And so the idea is just making this process as seamless as possible. And it's a no-brainer, and I'm very sort of excited to see how Instagram buy button progresses. My hope is that it doesn't sort of affect the authenticity of the platform. Moving over, I put a photo of Rebecca Minkoff in her store. Well, I don't know, again, who's based in New York and who isn't, but Rebecca Minkoff made sort of the fashion tech news when she opened her store in Soho that had all of these sort of interactive touch screens within the store as well as in the dressing room. And I remember when I first read about this, I was, not so sure. I was like, well, when I'm in a store, I don't necessarily want to shop on the screen. I kind of want to be in the store and shop the products. That's why I'm there. I can shop on the screen anywhere. And fair enough, but that's only one piece of it. I think the most exciting thing is when you actually take an item into the dressing room, there's a scan that reads the tag of the items you brought in, and so the dressing room automatically knows exactly what you have and in what sizes, and it brings it all up on the screen. It also makes suggestions for what could go with those items, or if you need another size, and it's just as simple as clicking on the item and then clicking, I need a different size and the size you need. And all of the store attendants are set up with iPads and they get notifications immediately. You can also order a drink and change the lighting in your dressing room. So it's really sort of this amazing experience. I know. It's pretty fun. And what's the coolest about it is I was sort of like, well, okay, but how is this going to affect sales? And they just recently announced that it tripled sales. It tripled their expectations for apparel sales in the store.
And, you know, maybe that's just because it made a lot of press, and so even more people were just going in the store. You know, getting traffic in the store is the first step towards, you know, increasing sales. But it also seems that, you know, there's probably something happening with this tool and the data that they're able to collect. What items are selling, which items go into the dressing room and then are left there, which items like never work in a certain size, which items are we suggesting with a certain item and then always get bought. So the amount of data that they can sort of collect and learn obviously is going to move forward as they're planning their next collection. And so that's really, I think, what is the most exciting, because most stores have absolutely no record of what goes into a dressing room and what comes out and why. So they're able to track all that and then obviously plan for that moving forward, and that's amazing. And then I just have to mention Amazon, because everyone knows Amazon, but they're really, in a sense, one of the more sort of just incredible retailers, period. And while it's sort of less sexy, it's really, at the end of the day, they're setting the standard for logistics and for what consumers are looking for in terms of retail and in terms of service. You know, free 2-day shipping. So many startups aren't really able to do that, but they're having to figure it out because this is what people have become used to. So just in terms of, you know, even looking alone at the operations and the logistics that they've been able to sort of tackle, and so the technology that they've been able to sort of create to do that is amazing. And I won't go on and on about Amazon, but it's got to be there. A lot of people say that they are starting to talk about brick and mortar locations. And if you ask Scott Galloway from L2, L2 is an incredible sort of research and insights platform that I suggest everyone take a look at. He would tell you that if you don't have both online and brick and mortar, you're dead. So very curious to see what Amazon does. I've heard rumors about them looking at, you know, abandoned like gas stations across the U.S. or just buying space in gas station stores, you know, and so it's just super fascinating what they could have up their sleeve. So, okay, I want to sort of move into this idea of personalization. And this is, I think, a really fascinating evolution that we've seen with this rise of fashion and technology. And it goes from not only sort of the data that you're able to collect, and so personalizing like the actual shopping experience and knowing what consumers want, but actually being able to personalize products at mass. So one example I call out is a company called Shoes of Prey. They're Australia-based, but they are global now, and they have a lot of sort of shop-in-shops set up in Nordstrom, different Nordstroms throughout the U.S. It's an incredible company. The founder, Jodie Fox, has basically hacked what she likes to call hacked manufacturing. So she's worked with some, they acquired factories in Asia and, you know, they became the employers of all of the people who worked in those factories. And in addition to making sure the working conditions were, you know, very high standards and actually giving them time off and paying them very fair, if not more than fair wages, they were also able to sort of get right in there and create a system for manufacturing products at mass where each one was different and customizable. So on Shoes of Prey, you can sign on, you can choose your size, and they have from, I think, like size 2 to like 15, like women's shoe sizes that you've never even heard of. No offense if anyone is a 2 or 15, but and they have a huge palette of colors and materials. And then they have basic toe shapes, basic heel heights and heel shapes. Whether you want a Mary Jane strap or you don't want a strap, whether you want a bow at the front or you don't want a bow. And then they have flats, they have lace-ups, and you sort of can pick and choose from a number of combinations. And I remember Jodie telling me it was literally over like 30 trillion different types of combinations that you could potentially make. And it's just, it's amazing that technology has allowed us to now let a user make a shoe and have it be shipped in very short amount of time I honestly can't remember, but it's like not that much more than a week or so, and at a very affordable price, and doing this at a mass scale. I also want to highlight a company called Normal, which I think is just an interesting example for retail. Well, Shoes of Prey is interesting for retail because this is online, but they've also created shop-in-shops in Nordstrom where you can go try on a couple of pairs, but you can't walk away with a Shoes of Prey. You walk in, you try them on, but then you order with an iPad. And so you can see a lot of the colors and shapes and try certain things on in person, but you ultimately customize and order from there, and then the product is shipped to your home later. Normal is similar in that their shop, which is on West 22nd Street, is their factory, their office, their showroom, and their retail store sort of all in one. This company has made, I don't know about you guys, but my earbuds fall out of my ears all the time and it drives me crazy. They basically solved that problem. You can go into Normal or you can download the app. You put a quarter next to your ear and you photograph your ear from a few different angles, which they instruct you how to do it. It's very easy. You send them off, and just a week or so later, or if not less, you get earbuds that have been 3D printed to fit your ear exactly. And I can attest to this because I own them. And both of my right and left ear were totally different, first of all. And if you look carefully at this like red, green, and yellow, they're all totally different. And they stay in, and it's freaking amazing. And you can see them being printed right there in the store. So this is also just sort of crazy. And I think you could argue that almost is going into sort of wearable technology. It's also going into 3D printing technology. And then I also picked out Farfetch. So I think Farfetch is such an interesting case study, not just from personalization at retail, but the future of retail as well. For those of you who don't know, it's a platform that's been able to sort of aggregate the best boutiques from across the globe. And so for those of us who, first of all, are interested in what shops in Japan are selling, but can't necessarily go to Japan tomorrow and go shopping, they've created a solution for that. But even more so, they've created a solution for these retailers and these small boutiques to get their product online and to reach a huge audience while doing that. They're launching all kinds of new technologies as well. Right now, they're beginning to support the back end of a number of different retailers, including brands. So beyond the boutique clientele, they will start servicing brands as well. But just a really interesting company in that it is also about personalization and sort of finding unique items. So it's sort of tying in a lot of different elements of fashion and tech. And they're one of the few e-commerce platforms that's sort of been labeled a unicorn, which is Silicon Valley speak for $1 billion valuation. Okay, moving on. Okay, I wanted to quickly address this issue of technology and luxury. This is something that I was able to attend the New York Times International Luxury Conference this past December. So it was about a year ago now. But the whole idea is the whole conference was about technology and how technology is changing the luxury industry. And I think that these are two things that are inherently opposites. So luxury is about timelessness. It's about inaccessibility. So the idea that very few people have these items, very few people can afford these items. It's about sort of preciousness and, again, like sort of long-lasting heirloom type of feeling. Whereas technology is the complete opposite. It's meant to be completely accessible. It's meant to change on a daily basis. And it's meant to sort of bring people together in that way and make things easier. So a lot of people are talking about, and especially people working in luxury fashion, are talking about how do we do this? How do we do social media? How do we do wearable tech products? It's almost innately against sort of our brand ethos. And I don't even have the answer, and neither do they, to be honest. Everyone's still figuring it out, and it's what makes this industry so exciting right now. But I had to pull up this Hermes and Apple iWatch collaboration, which to me is just like pretty fascinating. Clearly, Hermes got their brand identity, their font on the watch hand here. For Apple to sort of let any brand come in and sort of take the space in that way, I think says a lot. But also, it shows their flexibility as a brand. And a whole separate conversation is Apple as a luxury brand today. It has all of the elements of a luxury fashion brand. But one of the most important things I'm pointing out is that doesn't just happen overnight or by magic. When you look at Apple and you look at the executive team, you see something really interesting. So you see Paul Deneuve, who was the CEO of Yves Saint Laurent for many years and did an incredible job sort of increasing and building the Yves Saint Laurent business. He's been brought over to oversee quote-unquote special projects at Apple. That was a few years ago and before the watch came out, but when we started sort of having inklings about this watch, that Apple was going into some type of wearable or luxury product. And then, of course, Angela Arendt, who was the CEO of Burberry, and as we know, was sort of always on the forefront, Burberry being one of the brands that's always sort of on the forefront of what's happening in technology. And Angela came over as the head of all retail. And so I think really thinking about that from a fashion perspective and a whole host of other people who have come from Apple, coming from the luxury space. Okay, so I'm running out of time. So really quickly, I quickly want to talk about wearables. I hate that word, and I think a lot of people do, but in my opinion, wearables is tech companies partnering with brands. So really quick, Everpurse is a startup that made a technology that allows you to charge your phone. They did a collaboration with Kate Spade. Everpurse initially was going to try and launch their own handbag line. And I'm not taking credit, but I was one of the people who said to them, I don't know about that. The handbag space is very crowded. Just think twice before you embark on that venture, not to mention how expensive it is to make handbags. Signal is a wearable or a technology that is embedded into actual apparel to monitor breathing and heart rates. They collaborated with Polo. And then just a couple of smaller brands, AEA1, Covert, and Oleo, all making wearable tech products and trying to sort of launch their own brands making those products. So we'll see how they go, but I bet you anything that ultimately they're going to be partnering with brands, whether it's jewelry brands, apparel brands, watch brands, or whatnot too. And then lastly, this very important conversation about company culture and how technology has changed it. Are we going to get cut off? Okay, like 2 more seconds. So it's this age of entrepreneurship and the sharing economy, and this has all impacted corporate cultures in the biggest way. And this is obviously something that's not as obvious in terms of how technology has affected fashion and retail, but we start to see fashion companies struggling to make their cultures more like Google. How do they work with younger talent or millennials or really anyone at this age that wants to work from home half of the day or half of the week? And maybe that person has a space at WeWork and then, of course, Airbnb, just a great example of the sharing economy and a pretty amazing company as well. And then on that note of sort of company culture, looking at how company structure and organization has changed, just looking from an org chart perspective, and how there's happening in the news, this story in the Wall Street Journal about how data is starting to sort of take over the role of chief merchandisers. So the people who were usually predicting the trends and really deciding, okay, we're going to go really heavy into wide-leg jeans this season. We think skinny jeans are sort of over. Those people, their gut instincts are becoming less critical because the data is there now to sort of back things up. And of course, I have to shout out PreeLine, who's really saw this trend and has made a tool for brands to basically predict and collect that exact kind of information. And I think also just looking at companies like Zappos who have a completely unorthodox structure, which basically is no hierarchical structure whatsoever. But in order to really, even upend the typical processes of a company that large in order to sort of maintain a certain feeling and culture in the workspace, it's sort of amazing to think about an executive doing that, knowing how important it is just within their own walls for the employees to sort of feel a certain way at work. And then lastly, sustainability. I highlight Reformation. I think that Yael Aflalo, the founder, has done an amazing job, not just in sort of teaching and championing sustainability and sustainable fashion, but in also a lot of the other things we've talked about today. So both retail and online, and having such an authentic brand story and brand voice. The Reformation voice is so distinct, and it's honestly so funny and so smart, and it's just someone that you can relate to. And you also sort of learn something, and, but what Yael also always says is, I'm not going to compromise on the clothing. I'm not going to be either just super cool clothes that aren't sustainable or sustainable clothes that are ugly. I want both, and I'm not compromising. So Reformation, most people don't even know that they're sustainably made. They buy the clothes, and the sustainable element is sort of an added bonus. I won't even go through all the rest, but I suggest you guys check out these other companies. Some of these are startups. Caring is a luxury conglomerate that has an innovation lab that's doing incredible work, sort of developing sustainable materials for luxury. And then I also just wanted to point out a couple of fashion tech startups that we at FTF sort of highlighted as in our Founders of the Future Challenge. Again, I would take a minute and look up these companies. You're going to see the newsstand popping up in subway stations around New York City if you're based here very soon, I think this month. And check out the other two as well. Just a couple of really baby startups that show you what's possible and what is happening in this space. So that's it. Thank you guys so much.
Sorry I ran over. All right, so I know we're like a little bit over, but I just wanted to open it up for questions, if you guys did have any questions. So I'm going to pop the video on. Elizabeth and I are going to sit.
Okay.
You're going to stay here. So if you guys have questions, just unmute your phone and shout out your question. Try not to all do it at once. And we'll try to get like one or two in.
Cricket?
Anybody?
They're
All right,
exhausted.
I have a question for you guys, because you're both incredibly successful female entrepreneurs, and I was wondering, you have your amazing story of finding your inspiration as a child, but when was that moment when you said, okay, now I'm going to, take the leap and go with Karen Harvey organization, I'm going to take the leap and I'm going to start Cafe Pneumatic. When did you find that moment? I know we kind of, heard a little bit about yours, but, I think a lot of the people in this course were mentioning that they were thinking of starting their own companies. How do they know if right now is their moment or if they should wait and go to a corporate job? Do you have any insights there?
I can start. Mine, I'm not sure if mine was a moment. I think I might want to do this. Let me start taking some kind of action and testing it and seeing if it works. Because at the end of the day, I can build it up in my head to be something that's huge, and I can totally intimidate myself and maybe never do it. Or for me, it was like, okay, I know I don't want to be doing what I am doing. This is interesting. I know I'm going to do something with it. What it's going to be, what it's going to turn out to be, I have no idea. But I'm going to start throwing things up that I am excited about and see what sticks. And it's kind of evolved into a social entrepreneurship company, a coffee company, innovation consulting. And it's kind of just I just keep saying yes to things that make me excited. And I know that's kind of not the most analytical, do this to get this kind of answer. But I don't know, I truly think that if you like something, just start dabbling in it. Do it as a hobby, do it on your own time, and see where it goes.
Cool. Yeah, I think I was with Karen Harvey Consulting for a number of years And then I actually resigned because I wanted to start my own thing. And I was going to launch a direct-to-consumer sustainable yoga line that I still dream about it, to be honest. Maybe I'll still do it at some point, because this was like 3 or 4 years ago, before like the activewear like was so hot. And so I'm like still kind of kick myself a little bit. So maybe take that lesson too. But Karen, at the time I resigned, came back and said, well, while you're working on that, do you want to work part-time on this new website that we're going to build and launch? And I was like, of course, because I wasn't going to have any income while I was working on that. And it ended up sort of progressing, and I got kind of stuck back in full-time. And so while I'm, I'm this kind of mix between a very entrepreneurial venture while still also working for an overarching company. So, I do sort of have to change and that's why I do think it doesn't hurt to start with some actual real experience. Save money, get some knowledge about how things work. You're going to learn a lot. If you have an idea and you have the means to make it happen and you believe in it, like, go for it. Don't wait. But if you're not sure, I think, the people you might meet, the people you might connect with, and what you might learn and where that sort of might end up taking you could be, sort of hugely influential in the path also. So I think it depends on your situation. But I think, going into a corporate job isn't like writing your life away, as long as you always sort of keep the dream in mind and think you're working towards that. And maybe you're going to love corporate, and there's nothing wrong with that either. And honestly, a lot of entrepreneurs, like, it's hard too, it's sort of this really sexy, glamorous thing too, but it's hard. So, there's nothing wrong with, you're in a great company that you love, like, nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah, and it's okay to not love your first job. I remember someone telling me a long time ago, you may absolutely 1000% hate your actual job, but if you like where it can take you, and you like the stuff that it can teach you and the people that it can introduce you to, even if it's people that it can introduce you to, that you can talk about your hobby that you're really passionate about, that will one day become your business, where it can take you it's more about that than it is about like what you're actually physically doing day one.
Yeah, totally. Cool. All right. I don't think anyone's asking.
Anybody?
Anyone else?
Come on.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, you guys, for joining. Next week, we'll actually be doing it on Tuesday at 4:30, and we'll be talking about UX and UI and how to beta test a website.
I'm going to tune in for that.
Yeah.
I know, me too.
All right. Thanks so much, guys, for joining.
Bye.